And hear all good things about that. So let's hear it for none other than Gary Kristensen.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Do you like the microphone?
Or no microphone?
Turn it down.
Turn it down. Let's see here. I can figure out how to turn it down. Let me just get it.
Or talk softer.
If I just hold it farther away? Is that better? Okay, I'll try not to, sometimes I get shouting. You guys still, beginning January 1st, 2018, the City of Portland is adopting a new policy to require home energy scores to be done on homes that will be listed for sale publicly. It will apply to most homes. We're going to talk about that today. But hopefully everybody here is kind of aware of it but wants to learn more. Let's get started. So it is an absolute honor to be here in front of everybody. I'm humbled. I know a lot of people in the audience. There's peers and a lot of customers of mine, and a lot of real estate agents, a lot of appraisers. We have a great group, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to bring a unique perspective today to the City of Portland Home Energy Score. I'm an appraiser, but I'm also a certified home energy assessor. I've also been teaching classes for appraising energy efficient homes for Earth Advantage. And so hopefully I can bring some of that to this presentation. Something I wanted to point out is that in order when I became a City of Portland home energy assessor, I signed an agreement with the City of Portland that says if I'm going to go out and talk about the City of Portland's new policy, I have to follow their slides. So today I'm using the City of Portland slides, and now it's really hard for me to give somebody else's presentation. I'm going to try to add my own opinions. Those are my personal opinions, my personal insights. They may not be the City of Portland or Earth Advantage that made this presentation, but I'm going to do my best to make this exciting and unique and maybe a little different perspective. So first off, I am not here as an advocate for their policy, the home energy score, but I am an advocate for bringing value to our customers through just understanding and communicating change and things that are different and new. And today we're going to learn about the home energy score policy, why it's important, both to appraisers, agents, buyers, sellers, everybody, and I hope to add some real-world insight. So, why a home energy score? Anybody want to throw something out there? Anyone? Bueller?
It's a unit of comparison.
Well, thank you, Phil, for pointing that out. So let's dig into that a little bit. This is the City of Portland's answer, and then I'll give you some of my own thoughts. So first, and I don't like reading slides, but in this particular case, I think I will. The home energy score at the time of listing will help home buyers, sellers, and owners have access to information on home energy use that is credible and easy to understand. Allows the home buyers to have insight into full costs of owning a home, and supports the City of Portland's climate action plan to help reduce carbon emissions. So that's kind of the City of Portland's thing. And one of the things that always comes up whenever you bring up the fact that there's this new policy and everybody's going to have to do it, or most people are going to have to do it, the question that comes up is, boy, why didn't the market just, if the market really wants this, why didn't it just happen? And well, the problem is that the buyers just don't have enough pull. If you're a buyer and you're going around looking at house after house after house, you don't have any way to tell them, hey, can't the sellers give me information about how much it's going to cost me to own this house, how much the utilities and expenses are going to cost? And so at some point, the only way to make that happen, it's been voluntary for about 8 years, and at some point the only way to make that happen is just to make it the law. And that's what they've done, and whether we like it or not, it's here. And I think let's learn about it, let's make the best of it. I do think that from a society standpoint, it's a negative for the buyers, or it's for the sellers as a negative because it's something they have to do, and for the agents that have to guide them through it. For the buyers, it's a positive, but it's also for society. It costs about 10 cents a kilowatt hour to build new power in Portland, but if we're going to save energy through programs like this, it costs about 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's good for society, and I think the city of Portland talks a lot about the carbon emissions, and I think people don't care so much about the carbon emissions as much as they do when you put it from a perspective of, well, it costs 10 cents a kilowatt hour to build new power, but to save it, it's only 3 cents. I think that's just on the bottom line. So here's the report. We're going to talk more about it later, but just to point it out, it's a 1 to 10 scale. And the best way to talk about the home energy score is to put it into a context that everybody understands. And everybody understands miles per gallon on a car. And the home energy score is simply that. It's miles per gallon for your house. It's the home energy score. This slide does a really good job of pointing out the fact that if your house gets a low score, a 1 or a 2 or so, a low score on the 1 to 10 home energy score scale, it means it uses a lot of energy. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to sell for as much as a house that gets a better score. It doesn't mean people aren't going to buy it. It doesn't mean that it's not a quality home. It just means it gets a low score. And buying a house is a complicated decision with lots of factors. And this is just one thing. And you can see here you've got this luxury SUV that gets 15 miles to the gallon, and it's selling for an awful lot more than this economy car that gets 53 miles to the gallon. So so when the city was looking to adopt this new policy, they looked at what other cities have been doing that have a similar policy. And these are the cities around the United States that have a similar policy in place now. Does anybody here, other than, say, Brian Denny, know what makes Portland's policy unique? Does anybody? Anybody? No. Well, City of Portland has been learning from these other cities, and one of the things that these other cities don't have is that the score is not required prior to listing. The score is after the fact. It's in the inspection period, or they have a period of time after they purchase the house to get the score done. And that doesn't allow the buyers and sellers to make decisions based on the performance of a home. They don't know that they're getting into this home that's going to cost them a lot over the lifetime that they live there. With the home energy score, they're going to have a little bit more information to know the true cost of owning that home, because it can vary significantly from one home to another. One thing, I have a cousin that visited me recently from Denmark, and I told him that I was working to set up our business to start providing home energy scores, and it was a new policy in the city of Portland, and he's like, you guys we've been doing that forever in Denmark. Are you kidding me? You guys don't do that? There's only a few cities in the United States so far, but I think it's other parts of the world, this is pretty normal. So these factors are all influenced by energy consumption in a home. And everybody knows saves money, but a lot of people don't know about the fact that when your home is more energy efficient, it is possibly healthier, more comfortable, less carbon emissions, but I also want to point out more durable. So a home that is sealed up really tight, maybe the ducts are sealed up tight and the house itself is sealed up tight. When there's air being pumped through the house and you're getting pressure changes in the house, you're not sucking, if you have an energy efficient house, or at least one that's sealed up, you're not sucking dirty air from your damp, dirty crawl space and from your attic or from the walls and through the insulation and things like that. So you do have a healthier home. The more comfortable home that is more energy efficient, the human body is very sensitive to changes in temperature, especially radiant through a house. So if you have two houses that are both set at 70 degrees, but one house has maybe old windows or not much insulation in the wall, it will feel colder because you will feel that coldness coming through. It will be less comfortable. The one that they didn't put on the slide for the city of Portland is more durable, and I teach this when I teach my energy efficient homes classes. Homes that are more energy efficient, usually the products like the high efficiency furnaces, those are also the higher quality items that are more durable. And also if you're not sucking moist damp air into your house and then pushing it out through the stud walls and things and into your walls, you're making your home more durable that way as well. So it's just something I wanted to touch on. This chart kind of shows some problems that agents have with dealing with home energy in the listing process. You can see that agents know that the value of energy efficiency to the home buyers, that it's important for them to know in making that decision on the home. But a lot of agents are not comfortable with communicating that value to those buyers. So the home energy score kind of solves all those problems for the agent all at once. The home energy score it's not an energy audit. A lot of people are familiar with a home energy audit. What they like to say is to use the word assessment. It's not as detailed as an audit. It doesn't use thermal imaging. An audit will take about 4 to 5 hours. Typically will involve a blower door test. The home energy score will typically take about an hour and a half or so. It's less detailed. It gets the information that the buyers need, but it doesn't cost as much. So agents and appraisers have now this great opportunity to be part of something new that's not just new for Portland, but it's new for the country. And appraisers, this home energy score is not only going to help the buyers, but it's going to help appraisers because they're now going to have consistent data on every single home that sells in Portland on one factor. And as an appraiser, that is really exciting to me, and we're going to talk about that more. This data is going to be consistent, and it's always going to be input properly into the MLS, which is something that doesn't normally happen. So I am really excited about that. And I think real estate agents can be excited about that too, because they are going to be able to now add value to their clients in one more way. One more thing that is kind of elusive and not quite understood by the home buyers and the home sellers, and the agent will be able to explain that all to them and make them just that much more professional. So you may be wondering, how's this all going to work? All right, so there's 4 entities involved with the City of Portland Home Energy Score. The first is the U.S. DOE, so they manage the rating protocol. The Oregon DOE manages the Oregon specific requirements. The City of Portland manages the program here in Portland, and they're a partner with the Department of Energy. And then Earth Advantage was hired by the City of Portland. They're a nonprofit organization here in Portland, and they were hired to oversee quality and training for the assessors. So they're not only training the assessors, they're auditing their work files to make sure that they're consistent and accurate. So on the screen here you can see the outline of the city of Portland, and that is the city limits. That's where the policy goes into effect. If you're in Multnomah County and outside the city limits, it does not apply. This is how the city recommends that you check to see if a home is within the city of Portland jurisdiction. Go to Portland Maps. I think everyone in this room is probably familiar with Portland Maps. This is a home that is within the city of Portland jurisdiction. And here is an example of a home that is outside the city of Portland jurisdiction. On this slide, you can see the homes that are required to get the City of Portland Home Energy Score after January 1st. It applies to single-family residences and townhomes. It does not apply to condos and stacked units. It also does not apply to homes that are being used for commercial use, say a house that's being used as a dental office or something. It does not apply to accessory dwelling units. Yeah, you have a question, Nikki?
So is that townhome style? What if it's a townhome that isn't?
Good question. Townhome style condo?
Yes.
It is not. It is not required. They actually say in the documentation it says it has to be on its own lot. Yeah. But so it doesn't apply to ADUs. It doesn't apply to manufactured homes. Doesn't apply, and they just finally fixed the policy. It does not apply to floating homes. They clarified it.
What about like mixed-use residential?
Mixed-use residential, no, it does not apply to mixed-use residential that I'm aware of, unless you're talking about a like a single. Or are you talking about like the townhomes that have like a business use at the basement? Good question. You'll I have a handout that has a link to the policy. I'd love to look that up and see if that is an exemption. I would bet it is. Brian, Denny, do you know?
It's based on majority of use.
The majority of use? There you go.
So how do you define majority, whether it brings the value or the square footage?
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Oops. Well, it's actually if you apply for an exemption, it is super easy. I'll talk about that later, and it's also there's a link in the handout that I provided where you can apply for an exemption. To apply for an exemption, you fill out an online form and click submit. They'll say they got it, and the only thing you'll hear back later is if you didn't get it, and if you did not get the exemption, then you have a certain amount of time to go ahead and get a home energy score or appeal. So it's actually it's really simple. All right, so let's walk through the process of the home energy score. 3 steps. Here we go. Step 1. So the agent or homeowner must contact a quality measurement. That's really important. No, just or any other provider of the home energy score. There's actually on the handout, there's a link to go and find a list of approved home energy score providers. Let's see. This slide, everybody here I think knows the difference between an appraisal and a home inspection. And that's very similar, the difference between a home energy score and a home inspection. Home energy score is not a home inspection. No, it's looking at the energy use and estimating the energy use of a home and scoring it. Very similar to how an appraiser estimates the value of a home. They're not inspecting the home. Timing and cost. The score should be done as early in the listing process as possible. Make sure that you have time to get that done so that it can be uploaded into the MLS at the time of listing. It's expected to cost between $150 to $250. That's up to the assessor, not the city of Portland. So, and that's something I would like to point out is that the city of Portland, when they started the new policy, they estimated they need about 35 full-time home energy assessors on January 1st in order to not have oversupply or undersupply so that they could meet demand and have, because they don't want the prices to spike for these things, and neither do real estate agents or sellers. They want the price. They want there to be enough competition. They don't want huge long wait times. So they needed about 35, they estimated, and it looks like they're on pace to have over 100 on January 1st. So there's going to be plenty of supply. And I think the competition is going to be pretty stiff.
Is this retroactive, everything that's on the market as of January 1?
Nope. If you were listed prior to January 1, you're in the clear. But if you pull the property off the market and put it back on, then you have to have one.
No realistic.
Oh, sorry.
Finally, we get a year with no realistic.
Yeah.
So I've got somebody who wants to avoid this, and so my question is, if you were to sign the paperwork on, say, December 30th, but not activate it until January 7th, is that okay? No? Basically, that's it.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I think if you haven't publicly listed it yet,
Then it is.
yeah, I think it has to do with if you publicly listed it, you need that home energy score. So I would get it on the MLS on the 31st, December 31st. Yeah.
Does this apply to, for sale by owners?
Yes, if they're publicly listed.
That can put them on Craigslist.
Right, if they're selling their home to anybody that wants to buy their home, there are exemptions, like a family sale or something like that. You can check the full list of exemptions on the links that I provided. Okay, so once you get this home energy score, you got to put it up on the RMLS. You can upload a copy of the score to the RMLS and fill in the score on the RMLS, or you can do the easy way. And I don't think this is operational yet, unless somebody tells me, but it was supposed to be operational this month, where it would be an automated auto-populate. So it'd be one click. If the assessment is done, the home energy score has been done, all the real estate agent would have to do is there would be a pop-up that says, hey, do you want to allow the home energy score to be auto-populated? And they just say okay, and it automatically goes up into the RMLS. And isn't that fantastic, appraisers? I think that's wonderful. What if all the data was auto-populated from a verifiable source? I think that would be fantastic. So appraisers and agents should be extremely excited about that. Yes, Abdur.
So with the home energy score, are they going to use some of the existing blank fields in a CSV export for RMLS to populate that data, or are they going to be changing the export a little bit?
Good question. I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to direct that to somebody at the RMLS, but I don't know. That's a technical detail that I'm not aware of. So here's how the home energy score will look on the MLS sheet. And this is the website. It's called the Green Building Registry, also on the handout. Anyone can search and see what homes have had home energy scores. So the score is good for 8 years. If you have a home energy score done, it's good for 8 years. The only thing is that after 2 years, you would have to update the utility expenses, which all you got to do is log into here, put in the address, re-pull down the score, and it will automatically update with the new utility expenses. And if the home has any major improvements done to it in terms of its energy efficiency, you can even contact the assessor that already did the assessment and provide receipts. It's up to the assessor how they want to charge for updating the home energy score and how they want to, and whether they need to go back out and view the property. But the city of Portland has told assessors that it's okay to, if somebody provides you with a receipt that something was done, to go ahead and update the system without visually seeing it. But any fees for that would be up to the assessor as well. Okay, so finally, we're at step 3. The agents and sellers must make the home energy score available to prospective buyers. And that's probably just going to mean a stack of these things sitting on the counter. And like we talked about, there's lots of exemptions. Here's a list of some of the exemptions, and on the handout, there's a link to a full list. I mean, this is just a few. Foreclosure sale, trustee sale, deed in lieu of foreclosure, that sort of thing. So after January 1st, though, most homes are going to need it. The city of Portland was very concerned with having this be a burden on some sellers. So they have financial assistance available for qualified sellers. And there's also a link on the handout as well where you can click and get the financial assessment or the financial assistance for your sellers if they need it. And if you don't comply with the score, you will be subject to 10 years in a federal penitentiary, 5 years parole, and a $500,000 fine. Okay, just kidding. It's $500. Okay, so what is the home energy report? Let's dig into it in a little more detail. Here we have the first page of the report. So the first page is the score, and the second page are opportunities for improvement. And what you're seeing here is a zoom in on part of the first page. So the score is calculated by a modeling process. The assessor goes around the house and gathers inputs about the insulation, the types of mechanical, that sort of thing. And they input it into a modeling program produced by the Department of Energy, and it will spit out the score, 1 to 10, just like that. So you might be thinking, okay, what's that score mean? Well, it's graded on a curve. Here we have it right here. I should also point out that it's graded on a curve, but it's relative to the average national home on City of Portland weather. So based on local weather, but the average national home. So a score of 1 means that you're in the 15th percentile, that 85% of homes would use less energy. If you have a score of 5, that means you're in the 50th percentile, and that's basically the average U.S. home, how it would perform in our weather. And the score of 10 means you're in the 90th percentile, and it means that you use less energy than 90% of homes would in Portland weather. Uh-oh. So, what makes an above average home energy score? I don't like all the animations on the slides. I'd much rather just click them ahead. So, all right. So, what makes a home above average? That's a well-insulated home, well-sealed home, efficient mechanical systems, that sort of thing. And so let's look at that a little bit more. This is a pyramid that kind of shows where the home energy score is. So this is really important to understand that the home energy score is an asset-based score. Okay? So what it is and what it is not. It is the construction, the mechanical systems, and the average occupant behavior of the home. It's not based on the thermostat, or if you have 20 people living in the home versus 2. It's based on averages. And it's not based on, you can see the top of the pyramid, it's not based on lighting or appliances. This is the longer lived items of the home, how it's built, and its mechanical systems. Remember the MPG of a car, that the actual mileage may vary? Well, it's the same thing with the home energy score. Your actual energy consumption may vary. And this is just another illustration of that. It's insulation, not the thermostat. All right, so on this slide, we can see why being an asset-based why being an asset-based score is so useful to buyers and so useful to appraisers. It's because now you can compare things on an even keel, apples to apples. And here we have some similar homes. They look similar, they're similar in size, but there's a huge difference in their 10-year energy costs and even their annual energy costs. And that's something that the buyers should know about and should make decisions on, and the appraisers should know about it and analyze it if necessary. An efficient home is a big deal and can mean tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, so again, here's actual energy use. May vary. It's printed right there on the form. So what if the home gets a below average home energy score? Then you will have page 2 of the report, and there will be a to-do list on page 2. So this is an automated list. This is not something that the assessor puts together themselves. They input the data points into the computer, and the computer will spit out an automated to-do list. And the to-do list is based on things that are calculated by the computer to have a 10-year payback. So that's estimated based on local utility costs, but average national cost for whatever that item may be, like a furnace or some type of insulation. Here's the top of page 2, and you can see the first, you have the score, 3 today, but then the score with improvements is a 7, and it shows the estimated energy savings that you could have with those improvements. And something to point out too is if you're selling a home and you make some improvements and have the assessor update those improvements, and you've already automatically updated that, auto-uploaded that home energy score into the MLS, that information will then auto-populate when the assessor changes the score. Yeah, you had a question?
Is that every year, the estimated energy savings, or is that over the 10-year cycle?
That's the annual. Annual. Okay, so if you have 2 homes and they're the same in terms of construction, similar insulation, the walls, similar efficiency, furnace, all of that is the same, but 2 homes, one's bigger than the other, the bigger home will use more energy and will get a lower score. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, so what support is available to homeowners to improve their score? So the best resource is Energy Trust, and there's a link on your handout. They have financial incentives, and they also have a list of qualified trade allies that can help you make those improvements and can also help you get those financial incentives when you do make those improvements. Now, a lot of appraisers and probably real estate agents as well are familiar with the EPS, the Energy Trust program that allows they provide a score on homes that are built to above performance standards, above code. And those EPS scores do qualify as a waiver for the home energy score when the home is new. So yes, they do. Okay, let's move on to financing. And before I do that, does anybody know why lenders will lend more money on a more energy efficient home? Anybody know that? I'm sure there's a couple people here that have taken my energy efficient appraisal classes. Huh? Okay, your son?
Costs less to operate.
Well, the reason lenders are willing to loan more money when a home is energy efficient is because they're less likely to get defaulted on. A home that is energy efficient won't spike as much in the winter. Their costs of living in that home won't spike as much, or even in the cooling months of the summer. And And those are the months when people most often default on their loans. So Fannie Mae offers a Homestyle energy loan. They allow borrowers to receive up to 15% of the as-completed appraised value for energy upgrades. So ask your loan officer for details. FHA has a similar program as well, and that allows borrowers to borrow more on energy-efficient homes. And they can also use that money to make upgrades. Also ask your loan officer. So all of this kind of relates to value, because if people are finding it important to spend money and make improvements on their homes, or to borrow more so they can make these improvements, that all relates to value, and we'll talk about that here. So this is where the city of Portland says, okay, you can put some of your own slides in right here after this slide, how we can help. So the following slides are slides that I put in. Oh, yay, we're there. Okay, so the Appraisal Practices Board Valuation Advisory 6 states, while most appraisers lack the specialized training necessary to perform energy modeling, appraisers may be expected to review and understand reports that result from energy modeling. And they actually, in Advisory 6, they actually have this bolded, and they make it huge on the page. This is really important because the performance of a home relates to value. And we're going to talk about that. So first, before we do, though, I want to talk a little bit about the score, because this is the thing that that I'm asked about a lot. Like, why did this home get a low score? Why does this home get a higher score? That sort of thing. And for me, when we first started doing these home energy scores, I was a little confused about it as well. I scored my own home. I live in a 1970s split level, and my home scored above average. It scored a 6, and I was kind of like, okay, good, cool. And then we did a few jobs, and we did some older, pretty inefficient homes, and they scored lower than mine, and they didn't, okay, no problem, I was understanding that. And then we went to do a home that was built in 2004, and this home was just a spec home, about 2,700 square feet. My own personal home, also about 2,700 square feet. And this home had a 2-story foyer, and it had some a couple of spots where the ceiling was high, like in the master bedroom. A very typical spec 2,700, 2004 home. And this home scored a 2. And it had vinyl windows. And it had my house has 2x4 walls. This house had 2x6 walls, so you can put more insulation in there. And this house had good insulation blown up in the attic. And I'm like, what the heck? What did I do wrong? This house scored a 2? Are you kidding me? What's going on? And I checked my numbers, and I contacted the person in charge of training at the city of Portland and had them look at my numbers, and they're like, no, that seems fine. You did right. Okay, whatever. So at that point, I was like, I've got to figure this out. I got to figure out what really influences the score. There's kind of this, I had this perception that the newer house was going to score pretty good, just being newer, and I was totally wrong. So I started an experiment. I said, okay, well, let's do some experiment. Let's start with, since this whole thing is based on the average home in the United States, right? I said, okay, well, let's take a house that's 2,100 square feet, because that's the average square foot for a home, built in 1982. That's the average age of a home, and let's give it code level insulation. Let's update the windows to new double pane vinyl windows, and it's a pretty typical home. And I used typical mechanical systems. I didn't do ultra high efficient. They were just your normal gas furnace and an air conditioner. And that home, I ran the numbers, and it scored a 3. I was like, okay, great, now we've got a baseline. Then I decided to start changing one factor at a time. And I went through everything that I could think of and just changed one thing in the computer modeling program. And here is what I came up with on this particular one. Now, it could be different for any home, but this gave me a good idea of what's really influencing the score. And the biggest thing in the world, and the reason why that house that was built in 2004 scored a 2, is because the ducts were all either in the attic or in the crawl space. These ducts were insulated on that house, but even when they're insulated, if they're in the attic, an unconditioned attic or an unconditioned crawl space, they still lose a lot. And there you go. The ducts being in the conditioned space made the biggest point change. And there's a link on the handout to these results as well if you wanted to look at what I came up with. So these are the biggest things that changed the score. Oops. And this is a table of the things that had the least effect on the score. And this, again, this is just one scenario where I was testing things, but it was really surprising to me. I changed the window area by 50% and it didn't change the score. That might have been different had I had just single pane, like inefficient windows, but in this case, double pane windows, changing the window area by 50% didn't change the score at all. All right, so I'm often asked, how am I going to treat the home energy scores in an appraisal? That's a big question. So let's start with USPAP. USPAP states, standard rule 1-4 states an appraiser must collect, verify, and analyze all information necessary for credible results. So if buyers are making decisions based on some type of new information, then I should be analyzing it. And we could go on for hours talking about all of the studies that are out there that show that if you give a prospective buyer 2 houses and you make them well informed that these 2 houses are the same except for the fact that one is more energy efficient than the other, they will almost always choose the more energy efficient home, and they will almost always be willing to pay some, maybe small amount, maybe a big amount more for the home that's more energy efficient. This is pretty well documented with mounds of scientific evidence, not just nationally, but local studies as well that have been done right here in Portland and in Seattle and even in Bend and even down in Eugene. It's very clear. But what is not clear in all of this is that all of these studies are almost all of them focused mostly on new homes. What we don't know is what happens when you give a used home buyer this information. Portland is now the testing ground. This is so exciting. We don't know what's going to happen, but Portland is all of the real estate scholars, particularly ones who are interested in energy efficiency and value, are going to be watching Portland to see what happens. And it's really exciting to be right here, right now. We all get to see what happens. So this is how I'm going to start off treating home energy scores. First of all, I just showed you all the things that change the score. But you know what? I don't really care what the number is. I don't care if the house has a 5 and another house has a 3. I don't care. What I care about is the energy cost. I think that's the big factor, not the actual score itself. So what I'll do is I'll probably grid these. There's an energy efficiency line in most appraisal forms, depending on what kind of appraisal you're doing, but there's an energy efficient line where you can grid this and compare it. If I had all my comps are getting very similar energy costs, I'm going to be fine, no problem. I probably don't need to do much of anything. It's business as usual. But if I start gridding and I notice something like this, where we have one of the comps has low energy compared to the other 2, but they're all very similar in condition, because sometimes a house has been updated or something might have been updated in ways that will also improve its energy efficiency. So you don't want to get those mixed up. But if I've got very similar condition properties and I've got one that's outperforming the others and it's more similar to my subject, and look, I make all my adjustments and all my analysis, and I can see that it's a little bit of a high indicator, I might reconcile to the upper end of the range on this one. I might conclude that my subject is more like Home 3 and maybe give it more weight. I don't have to make an adjustment, a dollar adjustment. If you've taken my appraising energy efficient homes, we can go for hours about how to support an adjustment for that, and there's many ways to do it. But in this case, I don't think you're talking about huge dollars that you specifically need to put a dollar amount on it. I think you might just need to weight your reconciliation a little bit differently, maybe a little towards the upper end in this case, or if the house was performing, if your subject property was performing low, you might reconcile to the low end. But you also, before you do that, I think it's really important to pick up the phone and understand, say on comparable 3, I would ask the buyer's agent, was the energy efficiency of that home a factor? Were the buyers interested in that? Because, if it wasn't a factor at all in the sale, and our buyers, they haven't even been looking at those stupid papers on the counter and nobody's been talking about it. If that's the kind of answer I get, then maybe I don't need to reconcile up. But if I get the answer like, oh yeah, that was a big factor for them, well then I might have some evidence that there's some buzz about this energy efficiency and people are really paying attention and their decisions are changing based on it. So, appraisers need to be watching and listening. Okay, so let's wrap things up. Now we're back into the City of Portland slides. But this is all I got for you. So now you know what a home energy score is, and you know what a home energy score is not. An easy way to talk about the home energy score is by explaining it to buyers and sellers that this is an MPG, but for your home. It's miles per gallon for your home. So everyone here, let's go out there. Let's be leaders during this exciting time of change here in Portland. And the rest of the country is watching. So let's go out there and find out what happens and be excited. Because it's here and we can't do anything. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm happy to answer questions too.
We have time for a couple questions.
Yep.
The newer house that had the low score, the 2 score did, I'm just curious, what list of suggested improvements did they have?
That very good question. So her question was on that house that scored a 2. What were the suggested improvements? The suggested improvements were not that great, honestly. Okay, so this house had one of the suggested improvements was to when the furnace and air conditioner wear out, to upgrade them to a higher efficiency because they were middle of the road. But it said do that later. Wait till they wear out. And then the other thing that it suggested was adding more insulation to the cathedral ceiling part of the house. But in this case of this house, I think that would not be very feasible. Probably be very expensive and hard to do. They would need to talk to an insulation contractor, and find out if that can even be done for a reasonable cost. Because they just didn't have a lot of room to stick insulation above the cathedral ceiling. So, yeah, good question though. Thank you.
How will historical homes hold up to this, or homes that were built prior to a certain
Hold up to
the score if they can't be?
Well,
it's just not feasible.
there's a big myth that an old home's going to score poorly, and a lot of the old homes will score pretty well. Particularly if they have all the ducting within the conditioned space of the house, which you see that a lot in Portland, where you have a basement and the ducts run between the first and the second, the main floor and the basement. Those houses will naturally just perform better. Even if they don't have any insulation on those basement walls, they'll perform pretty well. So that's a big myth. But homes that are inefficient, that are just plain inefficient, I think will become functionally obsolescent quicker. Because people, over time, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen in the next year, but over time people are going to pay more attention to energy efficiency, and it will just slowly become more of the normal thing that people compare from one house to another, kind of like a view or anything else. sorry, I got one guy that asked a minute ago here. Go ahead.
Is there a critical failure in this report at all? Like, is there a 0 score where they just say, we have no clue?
Yeah, there is no 0. You can get a 1 as the lowest score you can get. You know, you mentioned a critical failure. The assessor can make a mistake in inputting the data, but I think that the training is pretty good and that it is not it's not as opinionated as an appraisal. It's pretty cut and dry. You know, you either have the insulation or you either have the windows or you have the furnace. You can make a mistake looking up the wrong the wrong efficiency rating on the furnace, or make a mistake estimating the wrong R value for the wall insulation. But I think for the most part, it's a nice, you know, it's an asset-based score, and it can be easily applied across all different properties. So that's a great question. Yeah, go ahead. I think I had one more question though right ahead of you.
The score's looking at things that have a 10-year payback, is that what you said? As far
Well,
as when they come back with the
the
recommendation?
recommended improvements, it will only recommend things that have a 10-year payback. If not, sometimes, occasionally, we'll get a house that won't have any recommended improvements, because nothing, I had that yesterday. We had a house that had 0, it got a 1, and had no recommended improvement.
Burden with the larger houses then, because there, you know, there's a lot of.
Yeah, that house yesterday was actually one that had been renovated in 2014, and they had renovated it with a lot of high-end efficient features, but it was a very big house, architecturally designed house that had walls of windows, just a ton of windows. I mean, things that you can't really overcome with some easy improvements. The only improvement it had for that house was it was a flat roof, you know, like your contemporary design, architect design home. It had a flat roof, and the only recommendation it had, but it said it wasn't feasible within the do now, was to put rigid foam on the roof to increase, because they didn't have any attic insulation. They just had a wooden roof. Yeah.
Just a question on, remember the Super Good Sons houses and how they said they actually were harder on people's health to be that wrapped up? Have you heard any argument on that with, you know, getting the higher home energy score, but, you know, having a really closed up house as compared to?
That's a very good question. That's a good question that comes up a lot. What they say in energy efficient building and energy efficient retrofitting, the saying is seal tight, ventilate right. So if you seal it up, you've got to ventilate it. Yeah.
But is that part of what I was, I think, if I could just add to that, is that part of what you're looking
The
at?
home energy score does look at sealing of ducts and sealing of the house.
But not the ventilation?
Does not look at specifically at, well, the house is ventilated. Now that would be, I think that would be for a home inspector to say, hey, this house should have a ventilation system.
Are wood stoves calculated in this?
Good question. Wood stoves are not. And I actually think that's kind of a failure of the modeling program. Wood stoves are not counted as anything. A lot of times a wood stove will be this big suck of energy from the house, because a lot of times they're not insulated and they just have a damper. You know, a lot of heat just goes up your chimney and goes away, but the modeling program does not consider that at all.
So does it consider the fireplace chimney and like a wood burning fireplace chimney?
Nope.
Nope.
You got 2 questions. Go ahead first.
You mentioned that lighting was taken into consideration, so I was just wondering if someone has an old home and they rewire the whole house and do LED lighting throughout.
Won't change the score at all. No.
Have you done any of these on luxury homes, like the super high-end stuff, $1 million plus? Are they anyway accurate, or are they sort of give you skewed results of a lot of people?
No, just large homes in general are going to be low scoring.
Okay,
So yeah, it is what it is.
yeah, I'm not looking for like reasons to hate this. I want to know because if I'm going to be in a lot of communities, we're not going to see a lot of data real early.
I think
but
what you're
getting a
going
lot
to
of
see,
questions.
homes, you know, 5,000 square foot homes, I think you're going to see a whole lot of ones.
Yeah.
So that's typical.
Yeah, and the buyers are gonna go, you know what, I'm buying a big home, it's a one.
When we call a quality appraisal to schedule our floor plan and our energy.
Actually, I do my home energy scores under equality measurement.
Oh, okay,
So, yeah,
okay.
two companies.
So when we
Yeah.
schedule though, will it be the same folks, or will you have to send two people out?
We have 4 people in my office who are certified.
Okay, so when we do that, we can have a twofer
Yep.
for that one appointment? Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, what's the highest score you've seen in actual real life practice?
I have not seen a 9 or a 10 yet, but, you know, we've only been doing these for about a month and a half. Yeah, a couple more questions? Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Regarding the, are you making adjustments now?
No, I have not made an adjustment for home energy because I don't have the data. Once we start getting the data, and we can start asking agents if this is a factor for their buyers. And if they start telling us, yeah, this was a factor that my buyers were considering, and we can start looking for evidence in the data. But the studies show and suggest that, yeah, buyers are gonna look at this.
Are you putting the score in the report now? Oh, wait, not yet.
Not till January 1st.
Actually, you do have a score now. You've got somebody who's, like usually a new home participated in one of the, excuse me, Energy Trust or Earth Advantage program, and we have a rating. You can use that.
Absolutely,
And
and
see if it does make a difference.
if any of you have taken my appraisal of energy efficient homes, you know, we look at EPS scores routinely for that, and I use the EPS information to help support my adjustments when I start comparing that, because I can, not only on the EPS Energy Trust Program, it says this score scored this, but this home, if it was just built to code, would score this. And so now we have kind of a difference. If we're looking at a code-built home, we can estimate how much of an improvement. EPS homes are at least 10% more efficient than a code-built home, so we can start to get some estimate of, okay, we've got 2 code-built homes and 3 EPS homes. How much do we adjust these code-built homes? First we got to see how much of a difference, cost difference in utilities there is. We also have to see if buyers and sellers are interested in that, and then start looking for evidence in the market to show up in our data. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just curious how busy you are with this, yes.
With the home energy scores?
Yeah.
We're doing a couple a day right now. I expect it's going to be busy.
Okay, one last question, we gotta clear the room then. You have a last question for Gary? No last question?
I appreciate all the really good questions. That made it much more interesting.
Let's hear it for Gary. What a great job. Now we're ready, 17 days.